ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नम ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगे राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यस्य कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा. So welcome to the Manah Shiksha series every Friday, Saturday and Sunday morning. In the last week, we discussed verse 4, commentary by Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Shivram Swami Maharaj. So I'll just briefly touch upon Shivram Swami Maharaj commentary. And then today we will see a short commentary by Sachinandan Swami Maharaj. And we will elaborately discuss Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj commentary. Shivram Swami Maharaj in his commentary mentions in paragraphs 1 about the overview of Manah. The first three verses are telling how systematically we should get attached to Radha and Krishna. And verse 4 now is speaking about the gross obstacles. And already in verse 1, he had made it clear, Dambam Hitva. So now, what are the four anarthas which are obstacles in getting attachment to Radha and Krishna? And the first one, Maharaj deals with Lakshmi Pati Rati. You cannot say that how is this an anartha? Because if you want to attain Braja Radha Krishna, then even we should give up this. And then Maharaj goes into Asat Katha, Asat Varta. Asat and Varta, he separates it. Asat means association of those who are atheists, those who temporarily want to enjoy this material world. And Varta is Gramya Katha, Indriya Gramya, I mentioned, the talk of senses and sense objects. So that is the Vaishya, and we should give it up. Just like a prostitute robs the wealth of the customer, similarly, it robs our spiritual intelligence to think about Krishna and steals our spiritual attachment towards Krishna. That's why we should be very, very careful. And then Katha Mukti Maharaj goes into Vyagra. Vyagra is thrilling. It's a tigress. The tigress is more ferocious. And Mayavadi are Krishna Pradi. That's why we should be very, very careful not to hear, because even a Mahabhagavat can fall down if he, hears Mayavad philosophy. Such is the power of the Mayavad philosophy. And then Maharaj concludes that Vraje Radha Krishna Swarati Manido. They have come to give us that highest jewel in the form of prema for themselves. And that's why we should give up even attachment to Narayan, because that is an obstacle for Raga Bhakti, which is only found in Braja. And the Brahma Vimohan Leela uh, actually depicts the Brahma's bewilderment depicts that the misconception that Aishwarya is superior to Madhuri. So this is the Shivram Swami Maharaj commentary. Now let us go to Sachinandan Maharaj commentary today. The mind is a storehouse of so many pollutants, and these contaminations are stirred by prajalpa, asadvarta vaishya, nonsense topics that are like prostitutes. So all these pollutants are sitting in the mind and it comes out. All these impressions of senses and sense objects are there, and it comes out in the form of prajalpa. Prostitutes pretend a loving excitement, but they are really after a man's wealth. That is their motive. They want money. They don't want the person. They don't want the relationship. So all of us devotees have a wealth, which is our inclination and determination to engage in devotional service. So this is our real wealth, which we should protect. Our inclination to perform devotional service. And that can be lost. Then why invite a prostitute in our lives by talking prajalpa? Actually, during Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's time, both the Grahasthas and the Brahmacharis used to chant 64 rounds. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, actually, this rule was more for the Grahasthas because they are out in the material energy and they are, in contact more with the material energy. And that's why to purify them, he had made it compulsory that they should chant 64 rounds. Whereas the Brahmacharis also used to chant because the Brahmacharis anyway have deity worship, preaching, or temple related service directly. So they are quite busy. But both is to follow. But Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is to get complaints both from the Brahmacharis and the Grahastha that how difficult it is to chant 64 rounds. We don't get time. We don't get time. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is to say, no, that's not a problem. The problem is that you are engaged in Prajalpa. So Prajalpa not only wastes one time, but it steals our determination to practice Krishna consciousness. This nonsense talk will steal our inclination and determination to serve Krishna. The type of prajalpa that is the most effective to steal our determination to engage in devotional service is to criticize others. Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Bhaktiyaloka mentions that one should take a vow while discussing the prajalpa topic, then one should never criticize Vaishnavas and not even criticize materialists. So, this prajalpa in the form of criticizing Vaishnavas is most effective in taking our determination to engage. This is a luxury prostitute. This type of prajala, and they're really expensive, the really expensive one, because she steals everything. When we criticize devotees or when we talk so bitterly or gossip about this one and that one's fall down, after some time we think, oh, Krishna consciousness doesn't work. That's the negative energy Prajalpa creates. Please remember this. There are two incidents in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where a devotee was so determined never to hear Prajalpa that moment if he heard the Prajalpa, he would leave that place. And because they did this, the Lord was so pleased that both attained the Lord immediately. And they both attained a great benediction. This is there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Who are these two personalities? Anyone knows? Raise your hands. Who never heard Prajalpa in their life, and the moment they heard, they left that place. And the Lord was pleased, so much pleased with their attitude that both these personalities attained the highest benediction. Anyone knows who are these two personalities I'm speaking about? Any idea? It's one is a very famous known pastime. Anyone would like to try? Virendra Yadav Prabhuji.
No, bro, I'm unable to correct.
Yes. So one is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. His brother committed, he did not respect, he disrespected Nityanand Prabhu because Nityanand Prabhu's one associate had come for the Kirtan in their home and he did not offer respects. It was a Vaishnava Aparadh. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami left the place that night itself. And Nityanand Prabhu was so pleased that he gave him Vrindavan Dham. And he composed the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The second example is of the parents of Advaita Acharya. Advaita Acharya parents, I don't recollect the names now. They once heard in their village a Prajalpa about a Vaishnava and they immediately left that village. As such, Lord Chaitanya was so pleased that Advaita Acharya descended as their son, who was the cause of descent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in one sense. So that is the benediction that if you don't criticize, then we attain the Lord. So it carries a lot of negative energy. What else is Asat Varta? Sorry. What else is Asat Varta or Prajalpa? Bhaktivinoda Thakur says it's discussion of temporary things, while Sridhar Goswami says it's village religion. Gramya Kata, village religion, or Indriya Gramya, talk about sense objects. Discussing about temporary things, Asat. When we have close association with illicit sexual partners, TV, radio, films, magazines, newspapers, or mundane songs, they certainly all fill our consciousness so that we forget Krishna. Excuse me. But the worst Prajalpa is describing the faults of others. That's the worst. Because that is a determined prostitute. I know that a lot of devotees go to the movies and look at magazines and newspapers and so on. This is too much and it pulls our consciousness down. It is very important to reduce non-devotional literature, outside movies, and other mundane entertainment. They leave permanent impressions in the consciousness if one is not careful. There are some movies that do explain a point in a good way, but each person knows exactly when it gets too much and one's consciousness suffers. And there is remembrance of movies instead of Raj Bhakti. Those who have taken brahmachari vows of celibacy and renunciation should not look at mundane movies at all. But those who are in other directions may want to see if there is something that helps in understanding and in the spirit of Yukta Vairagya can be used in service. Now, I'll give one example of this. Actually, one of the sannyasis in one country had to give a talk to, not philosophers, but writers. They were a high class of people based on a book written by another author about why the Kauravas failed in the Battle of Kurukshetra. So he has written a book on it based on his reasoning. So this sannyasi had to comment and give that understanding about it, and at the same time, give the Krishna conscious understanding. So that that was a preaching strategy. So he had to go through that book and understand what is there in that book. Now, the devotee who was in touch with this group of writers, uh, he was familiar because he was in touch with them. So Maharaj told him that you read the book and you explain me what is there in the essence. And Maharaj noted that points, and then he presented what the points are there in that book, and then he gave a spiritual and a devotional understanding in that seminar. And for your kind information, that was not recorded and uploaded in the YouTube or all, because it was meant for a specific audience. It was strategic preaching. So like that, in the spirit of Yukta Vairagya, it can be used, but you have to be very careful. But be careful. It is there, statement is there. Be careful. You are playing with fire, and some unfavorable impressions might enter your mind. As a result of this activity, you might remember the wrong things and not the right things. It happened with Ajamil. Prabhupada says there are millions of Ajamils out there because there are millions of posters, banners, and now in the smartphone, on the internet. This whole verse 4 is giving a list of wrong things that will prevent us from developing Raj Bhakti. We need to provide the proper culture so that our plant of Bhakti can grow. Manah Shiksha is the instructions to the mind. Instructions to the mind is all about this one point. So, to provide the proper earth, which has the right elements in it, so that our Bhakti plant can grow very nicely. Can grow very nicely. This is a short commentary by Sachinandan Maharaj. I felt it is a little important, so I discussed this. Now, any questions about Sachinandan Maharaj commentary, which we discussed? Few points. Any clarifications? Okay, now there is a very exhaustive commentary of Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj, and this will take 3 classes. Hopefully, we'll finish in these 3 classes, and it's very, very important. So let us go to Bhakti Vigyan Goswami's commentary. So paragraphs 1 to 10, attachment through mercy. That's the theme. Raghunath Das Goswami ends verse 4 with a similar instruction that he has given in other verses. Braje Radha Krishna Swarati Mani Dhav Dvam Bhajamana. Oh mind, worship Radha and Krishna. But this time he explains why we should worship Radha and Krishna. Why we should worship Radha and Krishna. Anyone in the audience, what is Raghunath Das Goswami? Why is he preferring that we worship Radha and Krishna? What is the reason? What is so special of Radha and Krishna? What they are giving? Anyone? Anyone think about it? The answer is there in the slide itself. You have to just figure it out. Anyone will try. You can try at least. Nobody wants to try. Krishnapal Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, the verse says Swarati Mani Dau.
Because they are giving their own jewel in the form of highest love. That's why specifically in this verse it comes out why Raghunath Das Goswami is saying Braje Radha Krishna. He says Radha and Krishna give us something very important. Swarati Dao. Dao means give. They give us attachment to themselves. Swarati Dao. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains in great detail that all our problems arise from our indifference or our lack of attachment to God. Jiva Goswami also in the beginning of Bhakti Sandarbha says, all our problems begin from the fact that the person turns away from God. So Jiva Goswami, when he begins the Bhakti Sandarbha, he quotes this verse, Bhayam Vidya Vivnivesh. Because our consciousness is now caught up in the material energy, that is why Viprayo Smriti, we have forgotten about Krishna, and then there is fear of material existence, and there are so many problems. And then he gives a solution, Tam Bhajet, Guru Devatmana. You should worship the Supreme Lord as a worshipable deity and as a spiritual master. So that is the solution, that Abdi is Bhakti. So turning our consciousness away from Krishna is the root cause of our suffering in this material world. The majority of the people fall into this category, not caring whether God exists or not. What they care about is what happens to themselves. We turn away from God, often saying, I don't care whether God exists or not. We may not even be atheists, but sometimes it is better to be a militant atheist like Kamsa or Hiranyakashipu than be merely indifferent. From reading Srimad Bhagavatam as well as from our own life experiences, we can understand that our main problem is that we have no attachment to Krishna. As a result, we are wandering unhappily in this material world. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita mentions, even in the Bhagavatam, that the goal is completely to develop attachment. Maya Sakta Manapartha, that's the goal. Right in 7.1 is mentioning. And in the Bhagavatam, in the Kapil Shiksha, it is there. Prasangam Majaram Pasham. Atmano Kavayogi. Sa eva sadhushapi. Mokshadvaram apavritam. So that attachment, deep attachment to this material world, if you get attached to a sadhu, it will be the cause of liberation. This is our main problem, that we don't have attachment. So again, in this instruction to his mind, Raghunath Das Goswami says, Vraje Radha Krishna Swarati Manido Dvam Bhajamana. Oh mind, worship Radha and Krishna and Vraja because they can give money. It is not M-O-N-E-Y. It is Chintamani in the form of Krishna praying. Money means a gem, a jewel or treasure. He says to solve our problems, you need attachment to Radha and Krishna. This cannot be obtained by some artificial means or by force, but only bestowed upon us. This is ultimately bestowed upon us. Now, Maharaj will go into an explanation that we should also endeavor and look for the mercy sincerely. Therefore, worship Radha and Krishna in the hope that someday they will give you this attachment. Next paragraph. We must understand that the path of bhakti is one of mercy. It cannot be taken by force or achieved by our own efforts, but bhakti is given to us by Krishna. Bhakti is independent and on the level of God himself. Bhakti is the Swarupa Shakti of the Lord. Just like the Lord is independent, bhakti is also independent. It can appear in somebody's heart, it cannot appear. It depends on its own sweet will. Just like Bhagavan is Swatantra, Bhakti is Swatantra. And Bhakti is Sarupa Shakti of the Lord. Therefore, Bhakti is self-willed. God may either come to us or not. Similarly, Bhakti will either come or not. But one way we receive Bhakti is by someone giving it to us. So only when we come in touch with a Bhakta, that Bhakta, when he shows compassion, the Bhakti which is there in his heart, we experience it, gets reflected in our heart. So that's how Bhaktya Sanjayate Bhaktya. There is no material cause for Bhakti. Then Bhakti, ceases to be spiritual. Bhakti causes Bhakti. So when we come in touch with someone, then we receive Bhakti. Nevertheless, it does not mean that we should not do something ourselves to get Bhakti. So it doesn't mean like that. Both our endeavor, prayas, and kripa, hankering for that mercy. As a rule, people have a strange attitude, thinking that either I'm doing something completely myself, or this will be given to me completely by mercy. So there are these two extreme attitudes, and both are not so good. So in the Sri Vaishnava, there are two kinds of tilaks, and they express these attitudes. One is called as the Vadangalai, and the other is called as the Tengalai. The Vadangalai have a V-shaped tilak, and the Tengalai have a T-shaped tilak with Lakshmi in center. So I don't know which one, Vadangalai or Tengalai. They say, completely we should depend on mercy. That's it. Just like, the cat carries the kitten. The other says, no, it is monkey type. Completely, just like the monkey holds on to the father monkey to, be steady. So we have to put complete effort. That's it. So these are these two extremes, attitudes. And for kind information, both there was clashes between these two understandings. or attitudes, and the matter had gone during that time, 150 years ago when the British rule was there, it had gone to London. Supreme Court was there. The matter was decided there. And the judge said, the barrister or the lordship said, how can we decide this? This doesn't come in our scope, and it was rejected. So now also they have this, two extremes. Ours is in between. We put our endeavor and we also, pray for the mercy, just like the Damodar Leela is there. Actually, we like to say that bhakti should come by itself, by mercy, because then we can make the excuse that we don't have to do anything. This should not be our attitude. An example of this attitude is the Catholic Church and its indulgences. So the Maharaj is giving how this extreme attitude, you can have that example. When the Catholic Church was building St. Peter's, it had to raise funds for it. Someone had a brilliant idea to accept donations in return for forgiving sins. So this is the idea they came up with, that you sin and you come and ask, do confession. And for whatever sin, they had decided this is the amount you have to pay. So then you'll be forgiven. It was the most brilliant technique for collecting donations that has ever been created. Accordingly, indulgence appeared. You did not have to do or believe in anything. You just had to give some money to God's work and you will be saved. Hence, one of the most popular religions originated in the 16th century as the result of one honest monk called Luther, who resented this trading of indulgences. So he opposed it. When Luther saw this hypocrisy and abuse of religion, he was inwardly outraged. He hung a memorandum on the wall of the cathedral saying that a person is saved not by deeds, but by faith alone. His statement was made in a honest way with good intentions. He wanted to stop the abuse where people were told, just do something and you'll be saved. As a result, the church declared him a heretic. He's a deviant. Now, in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, anyone knows how this deviation also came in the Gaudiya Sampradaya like this? Anyone knows? It's very famous, well-known deviation like this also happened, that you keep on committing sin and you'll go back to Godhead. And they quoted Shastra for this. Anyone knows? Raise your hands. Anyone? One hand has been raised. Yes, Krishnapal Prabhuji. Yes.
Is it the Jat Gosais quoting
Yes.
Ajamila's pastime?
The Jat Gosais, they said, we have a monopoly to preach because we are coming in the Nityananda Vamsha and the Advaita Vamsha. We have the right to give the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, no one else. So in order to maintain their temples at homes, where actually the deities were installed by, the great acharyas in Mahaprabhu Leela, they wanted just the money to come as donations so that they can maintain their lives. And people innocently were coming and they were eating fish, especially in Bengal and Orissa. So can we continue eating fish? He said, take this Hare Krishna mantra and do whatever you want. Ajamil was so sinful, but at the time of death, he called Narayan and he went back to Godhead. So this is the proof. So they completely misinterpreted this scripture verse, and so many Ampa Sampradayas came in the 18th century when there was no great acharya. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur descended and he smashed all these Ampa Sampradayas. And then he wrote the Sri Harinam Chintamani, that if you chant Nam Aprad, you will not go back to Godhead. You have to chant Shuddha Nam. So all these stages he explained very elaborately. So similarly in the Christians, this happened. They declared him as a heretic. For the indulgence, you had to at least pay some money. Now with Luther, you don't have to do anything. Declare, I believe, and that's it. People have carried this idea of mercy to the point of absurdity. I just believe, that's it. I don't do anything. So this is again one extreme attitude. When people are told that everything comes only by God's mercy, and they just have to believe, they immediately say everything is fine with me. So once I got down at the Bombay railway station and I took a taxi to a temple, and one person told Hare Krishna, please come, I'll drop you. I'm also going there to the temple, near the temple. So I sat, and then he told, I love Krishna. I believe in Krishna. That's it. So then I could understand his attitude. I said, if you believe Krishna, then you should follow all the instructions Krishna has given in the Bhagavad Gita. Follow all the regulative principles. It's not that I just say in my heart I have love for Krishna. No. The more meticulously you follow the instructions of Krishna given in the scriptures, that actually exhibits our love for Krishna. No, I just believe. That's it. And do nothing and do all nonsense. I've already believed, and now I will just wait for the mercy. But the point is that a person should wait for the mercy and simultaneously do everything they can. This is, what we should take the middle path, as I mentioned. People cannot understand this point because they think that if I wait for mercy and rely on God, then why should I do anything else? If we are on an ocean, fragile boat, and there is a storm raging, should we just pray? We must pray and simultaneously row because God helps those who help themselves. Mercy is the source of everything, but this does not mean that we should not make an effort. We should not make an effort. So now, Maharaj has mentioned that verse 4 is discussing about attachment to Radha and Krishna. And these two extremes we should not have. We should endeavor also, except, pray for getting mercy. Now Maharaj goes to the next theme from paragraphs 11 to 50 about mundane topics, Asadvarta. He goes into a lot of detail of the analysis of Asadvarta, which we will see now. Any questions up till now? The first theme. Anyone has any questions? Any questions? Any clarifications? I have a cold today because of the change in weather. Okay, now let's go to this Asadvarta, mundane topics. In this verse, Raghunath Das Goswami explains that we should act so that this precious jewel, the treasure of attachment to Radha and Krishna, comes to us. We should act in such way. We should meticulously follow the don'ts so that we can get Rati. The first important instruction for action that he gives in this verse is Asadvarta Vesha Visijamati Sarvasya Arani. The first thing a person should do is to get rid of Asadvarta Vesha. Asad means temporary or unreal. It also means illusory, non-existent, without true substance. That thus Asad is something that does not really exist. Varta means news. A newspaper in Sanskrit is called as Varta Patrika. It's called as Varta Patrika. Must be knowing. Patrika means a sheet where the news is shown. Asadvarta means unreal news. Some things related to the material world. Vaishya means a prostitute. Asadvarta Vaishya, the Sijja. So, next paragraph. His first instruction then is that in order to attain this precious treasure of attachment to God, give up Asadvarta. I must turn away and leave this prostitute or woman of easy virtue who is Asadvarta Vesha because she steals. Harani, she steals. Such women may rob their customers when they have relaxed and fallen asleep. Raghunath Das Goswami says, what does the unreal news of this world do to us? It robs us of spiritual intelligence. Mati, Mati, which flows towards Krishna, that flow is obstructed. And we discussed why Mati has been used here in the last class, if you remember. Mati means mind, the mind which is flowing towards Krishna that gets deviated. He says, Asat Varta Vrishujya Mati Sarvasya Harini. If you do not give up this, it will deprive you completely of your spiritual intelligence. Actually, we need to understand how this happens, because if we do not understand, then we will sooner or later be deprived of our spiritual intelligence. We know that most prostitutes usually look attractive. And in the same way, the news of this world also looks attractive. So Maharaj is now giving a metaphor, comparison. Just like prostitute looks very attractive, material news also looks very attractive. When we open the newspaper and start watching TV everything is so attractive. Our minds are drawn to it. But the news of this world is just like a prostitute. Who must first seduce the person. And how do prostitutes do that? They have special manners. They dress in a particular way and they put on special makeup. So they show their hav and bhav. We say in Hindi, they show their hav and bhav. But what is actually their essence? What is actually their essence? Their intention is to rob and turn their client into a pauper. Turn into a pauper. Now, Maharaj gives a story to explain this principle, what he's stating here. The story of Akbar and Birbal nicely illustrates this point. Akbar was a great Muslim emperor and Birbal was his advisor. Akbar once asked, I have heard from the Indian scriptures about Apsaras. Apsaras are celestial courtesans, the most beautiful women in the universe. And it is also mentioned that they are witches. And Akbar said, you can do anything, Birbal. Bring an Apsara and a witch here to the palace. I want to see them. So Akbar wanted to see both an Apsara as well as a witch. Birbal thought and finally found a way. He took his wife and went to a prostitute. He then told both of them, cover your face and your bodies entirely tomorrow when we are going to the courtroom where the great Sultan sits. Next day, Akbar, seated on his throne, asked, well, Birbal, have you bought me an Apsara and a witch? He said, yes, I have, your majesty. Here are the two of them. The Sultan said, show me the Apsara first. I want to have a look. It is always nice to see someone beautiful first. Birbal went up and told his wife to remove her veil. The emperor saw an old wrinkled woman wearing ordinary clothes. He said, this is an Apsara? Who is this ugly old woman? Birbal said, your majesty, this is an Apsara. Believe it or not, she is my wife and she is so chaste, so kind and so affectionate. So beauty, in fact, is not, based on the body. The beauty is of the soul. And if the soul is, humble, chaste, and has qualities, these qualities are the real beauty of the soul. And just to give you a classic example, Srila Prabhupada in Juhu temple, in his own room, he was having a meeting with all the GDC men. And a lady, Mataji, she was employed, she had to come and clean the room. So she saw that, Prabhupada and all the GBC men are in the room, and she was cleaning the corridor, and now she had to come inside the room and clean. Now Prabhupada immediately saw this. Immediately he stopped the meeting and he said, let's go out and let her come and clean the room. So that is how Prabhupada gave respect for chastity. Although she was a simple maid servant, dressed in shabby clothes and, not so beautiful, But Srila Prabhupada was so conscious that he stopped the meeting of all his, GBC men who were there, big, big personalities. Prabhupada, you can imagine. So this is how, real beauties of the soul. My wife takes such nice care of me like no Apsara would ever be able to. She is a true Apsara. He said, okay, well, show me the witch now. He went up to the prostitute, removed her veil, and saw a beautiful woman, and then said, here is the real Apsara. Whom did whom did you show me before? Birbal said, no, your majesty, this is a witch. Because as soon as you are left alone with her, she will get her teeth into you and won't let you go until she has sucked all your blood. Here, Raghunath Das Goswami says Asadvarta Vaishya. The news and events of this world, the things of this world seem very attractive and we fall easy prey to them. So how does she suck the blood? We all know. So we should be very, very careful of the Varta, Asadvarta. Asadvarta is compared to a prostitute. Very, very heavy thing. An aspiring disciple came to me once and begged for forgiveness because he said that a woman had seduced him. That's how, all his blood was lost in the form of semen. At the same time, I could see that he very much liked the fact that he had been seduced. There wasn't a trace of remorse on his face. Although he was saying, please forgive me, I could not resist. We so easily beguiled because we want to be. This desire for fleeting pleasure resides deeply in our hearts. We begin to justify ourselves in various ways. For example, the man who said he had been seduced and then forcefully asked me, well, may I continue this relationship or not? I told him no. To which he said, what if I make her a devotee? This is how our mind works. We have this deeply hidden desire or just a hope to enjoy this material world. And this is our main problem. Why does a person so easily fall prey to a prostitute, a Sadvarta, Vaishya? Precisely because a hope lives in his heart that he will be able to be happy. So as long as one is not completely frustrated with material world, he cannot take to spiritual life very seriously. He has a hope that I will at least little bit enjoy in this material world. So that is why we fall prey to this prostitute. By fair means or foul, we have been struggling to be happy for a very long time, despite all our experiences to the contrary. When we invite this material happiness, we also invite misery because material happiness and unhappiness are two sides of the same coin. So when we invite, we want to enjoy, then we invite misery. So which verse in the Gita you can quote for this? That happiness leads to misery. Anyone? That, trying to invite happiness is actually misery. Which verse you can quote for this? Anyone else also would like to try? Yes, Krishnapad Prabhuji.
ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगाः दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः.
Yahi samsparsha jabho. Samsparsha means contact with the desire to enjoy. Dukkha yona. Yonaya means yoni. Yoni means source, Prabhupada is saying. Now, a man may try to impregnate his wife, a woman, and he might not be successful. But contact with the senses and sense objects, the impregnation is 100%. 100% you're impregnating. This is how, It is. The moment you contact senses and sense objects for happiness, you have impregnated. It will 100% give you a result of misery, no doubt about it. you know, Jiv Goswami in the Sandarbhas mentions, I'm not able to recollect exactly that phrase, that Sukha, Dukkha, Yoni, something like that. That happiness, the desire for happiness is the birth of misery for you. But as long as the hope of enjoyment and material happiness is hidden deep inside us, temptations remain. The moment we are faced with temptations, this hope for enjoyment immediately pops up in front of us and says, yes, that's it. You have never had that. Srila Prabhupada made a very nice comparison about the nature of manifestation of temptations in our life. He explained that our consciousness mind looks like by using a contemporary example. What our consciousness mind looks like, he gave an example, very interesting. He says that our subconscious mind is like a photographic film. Of course, nowadays such film is practically a thing of the past, but not so long ago, there was no digital cameras, but only that required film. This kind of film has silver crystals, and when the film is exposed to light for some time, these silver crystals underwent a reaction. The areas where the silver was, everything goes black. So you know how the photo was developed. An image is there, clicked, and the film is processed. And when they put this certain silver crystals, then it's exposed to the light. Then that portion where the silver crystals are there is a reaction. But what else needs to be done to the film to create the photograph? It must first be developed and then it must be fixed. At the beginning, there is no image visible. And this situation is like our material life. In the beginning, there's no image in the chitta. This whisper of enjoyment of material life, so to speak, leaves impression or samskar imprinted in our subconscious mind. Now, please hear this. Just that impression, like you hear. I remember before joining Krishna Consciousness, I was working in a software company for some time, and my boss had come, and he was from that same local town. And the moment he came, we were discussing, and then he said, I go to this restaurant because their misal pav is really excellent. That's it, he told me. And because this whisper I heard, there was an impression in the chitta. And then I found out that restaurant and went and had misal pav. So this is how it leaves an impression, some scar. And please remember, the whole creation began with sound. began with sound. Now, how subtle is this sound? Please remember. So when you hear the sound, it creates space, akash, ether. And the matter, the ether, which is a subtle matter, creates the gaseous elements, that is air. And then it creates a radiant energy, which is fire. And then that matter turns into a liquid form in the form of water. And then that matter takes on to a solid form in the form of earth. So just imagine what sound does. So ultimately you heard that sound of misal pav, and then you went and tasted that misal pav which has earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and relished it. So just like sound actually can cause this kind of entanglement, sound is also the source of liberation. The Hare Krishna Mahamantra is also a transcendental sound. And in the Vedanta Sutra, it is mentioned, Anavritat Shabdhat. By Shabda, you can become free from the coverings and get liberated. But hearing material sounds, this leaves some scars in the subconscious mind. And any time they'll come up. It's very subtle phenomena. We should really recognize this, how this phenomena works. And Maharaj is giving an example to explain of that photograph film. These samskaras are like an undeveloped image on a film. There is a long film inside us with many, many shots. In fact, this heart or the mind is like a camera. And when you're seeing something, all these images are being, impressed upon the chitta. And when we focus particularly on one image, then what happens? In the Bhagavad Gita, there is a verse which mentions this. Anyone knows when one of the senses hooks on to the sense object, what happens? What does Bhagavad Gita verse say? Which verse is that? Anyone knows? Raise your hand. It's a very important verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Anyone? Ras Parani Mataji, yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavad. Is it Dhyayato Vishan?
Dhyayato Vishan, yes, that's also true. Any other verse you can quote? Krishna Prabhuji, yes. Yeah, yes, Krishna Prabhuji.
Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano.
Yes, this is the Dhyayato Vishan concern. Yes, when we contemplate what is the phenomena happens, that is okay. But Indriyanam ni charantam, yan mano anu vidhiyate. Mana, the mind, anu means it focuses, it becomes engaged in that. Tadasya harati pragyam. The spiritual intelligence is stolen. Vayur navam ivamasi, just like the air, rocks the boat which is in water. So this is how subtle the phenomena is, and Maharaj is explaining that. So please remember that all these shots, images are there. I remember once every day, I used to go from the temple to a particular place for my service. Every day I had a service of visiting an office. And in the car, I used to go by the same route. And when you go by the same route, the grooves are created in the mind. You naturally go like that. And in Bangalore, there's a Windsor Manor Bridge, very famous bridge, where the Windsor Manor Hotel is there. And you go underground the bridge and you come up. I was just sitting and studying. And then suddenly there was a huge billboard. And on the billboard, there was a Mataji picture. But somehow, when I was studying, because the vehicle went down, and I just looked up, I saw this image. Just, how many seconds, not even half a second, that image I saw, and we just went ahead. Next day, a very interesting phenomena happened. That while I was passing by the same road, just before the underground bridge, suddenly my mind said, look up. Because that impression was there, I suddenly, turned my head up and I said, what is this? How come, why did I turn it? Because the impression was there in the mind, and now the mind was giving a signal. Again, look at it. So repeatedly, again and again, you look, the more the samskara will get deeper and deeper, and then it can cause dhyayato vishayan pumsan. We have photographed everything that has happened to us for so long. That is why I'm against the principle, not only for outsiders, but for devotees, not to stand before the altar and take pictures of the deities. Why are you capturing the images in your mobile memory? Capture the images from the eyes and drink it in the chitta, so that the spiritual impressions will form in the chitta. But if we waste our time in taking pictures, and we have to drink it and meditate and try to see that image, so that all the material impressions also get wiped away by spiritual impressions. So we should be very careful about this. This is how the mind is working. All the images of our enjoyment are there in the subconscious mind, and it is a very large album, very large album. However, the major part of these images are not yet developed, but the samskaras are there in the form of original imprints. Just like the image develops on film after being immersed into the developer of the film of our subconscious mind is the environment or prajalpa. Words or vibrations serve as the most powerful development through which memories of sensual impressed pleasures emerge from the subconscious mind. So I was giving you this explanation how sound creates, space, and then uh, there is a gaseous element, then there is a fiery element, and then there's a watery element and the earthly element. So this is how the developing processing happens in the subconscious mind. So these words or vibrations can create all this in the subconscious mind of sensual pleasures. We need to hear about sense gratification, and immediately the image appears that had been hidden there before. Now, I'll give you some experience to understand how sound creates form, image. And you must have this experience. Before there were no mobiles, there were telephones. And suppose, you are working in some other town and the wife or children in some other town. And when you receive the phone call and you hear your wife's voice or children's voice, moment the sound enters, immediately in the mind, the picture of the form manifest. So the image immediately appears. This is how subtle it is. This is how subtle it is. For example, people read novels describing indecent or obscene scenes. Fools write and complete idiots read them. Complete idiots read them. Readers devour these types of books because as soon as the sound comes, it brings along an image. Please be careful what these sounds are doing to us, material sound vibrations, and how much we are exposed to these material sound vibrations, and how much we are exposed more to spiritual sound vibrations. Along with that image, an image of our own sensual pleasure pops up, and the samskaras become activated. And that image also, wow, I had enjoyed that gulab jamun last time, so let me now enjoy it. And the mind dictates the intelligence, and the false ego, who's a real enjoyer, says, yeah, it was good, let us have it. And then the samskars become activated. This samskar has been sleeping, but it is nevertheless alive in the subconscious mind for a long time, and now emerges. Now emerges. This is the film developer of our subconscious mind. So we have a film developer in our subconscious mind who's, developing films and images and showing us that you can enjoy this. Now, frankly speaking, Ajamil, although he saw that scene, that image got imprinted in his samskars. And although he had such spiritual samskars from 25 years, because he was born in a Brahmana family and he was right from age of 5, he was in the Gurukul. But yet, Ajamil saw that scene, he immediately, you have seen that picture, he was very fearful seeing that scene. And then he started moving back to the ashram because his spiritual master had told him, his father had told him to get wood. And he was contemplating on it. And not only that, he was contemplating on it, he was trying to contemplate on the Shastra. Smriti, Ramsa, Buddhi, Nashu. So Smriti means Shastra. So he was trying to, Shastri quotations he was giving. How, these are wrong impressions and these are not good for my spiritual life. So he's preaching to himself. But yet, because of continuous contemplation of that image, one of the sannyasis was telling that he did not take the shelter of the Lord that time. Because that image which was now imprinted, that image, it started, because of contemplation, the image started becoming deeper and deeper in the chitta. So when suddenly such images you see, what is your step you should do to wipe out that image Otherwise, you know what is the consequences. What we should do when it happens like that. What we should do. And again, compare that with the analogy of what Maharaj is saying about the film developer, about the film. What we should do. Anyone, think about it. When such wrong image, immediately you see what we should do so that that image doesn't start getting processed in the film developer called the mind. Yes, Rasparan Mataji.
Prabhuji, should we pray and try and take shelter of Guru and
We should immediately pray, take shelter of the holy name. Chant the holy name and immediately put the spiritual impression. This is like, you have taken an image. The film has captured that image now. You remove the image immediately and expose to the sun. What will happen? Then it cannot be developed in the, the developer cannot develop that image because that is exposed now to the sun. It cannot be developed. So immediately we should, take the shelter of the holy name, which is like the sun, and eradicate. Immediately we should go and speak to a devotee and confide this and take shelter of Guru Krishna and especially the holy names, because holy name is immediately, we might not be able to at that position speak to someone if you're in the jungle or go to some devotee and tell, but the Lord is there in the form of the holy name. So this is very important. Okay. So now last paragraph I'll take for today. Then we'll continue the discussion tomorrow. Another example is that when the spiritual master sows the seed of bhakti in our hearts, the seed of faith, so it needs watering in order to grow. Hearing and chanting Shravanam Kirtanam is the water of our seed of faith. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Now Maharaj explains that as you water the seed of the Bhakti Lata, unfortunately there are many other seeds in our heart growing alongside with the small seed of Bhakti Lata Beach. We have been planting them there for a long time to grow these seeds, grow these desire seeds, also need watering. Hearing and chanting about mundane things is the water that germinates these seeds of material desires. So Shravan Kirtan will give, nourishment to the Bhakti Lata, and Shravan Kirtanam about mundane things will give water to these material desires. Please remember this. For instance, advertising is often based on sound. I mentioned this now. In our minds, sound is linked to the image of material enjoyment. When we hear that vibration, it evokes a desire in us. The sound is an advertisement for Pepsi, for instance, makes us feel like drinking a Pepsi. So this is how subtle is the phenomenon. So I'll stop now and continue this discussion tomorrow. Any questions, any clarifications up till now? Okay, so we will stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami ki Jai, Sri Manah Shiksha ki Jai. Hare Krishna.